This is Belle Hidden Archer, but more importantly, this is a problem. What's up, Lorcana Players? Havry here, and today I'm here to discuss the newly revealed Belle from Rise of the Floodborn, and why I think it needs to be monitored in the coming months. To even start dissecting how absolutely absurd this card is, first it's important to understand the state of Lorcana as it is right now. Lorcana is a game where card draw is pretty much exclusive to one color, and card draw outside of that color is pretty scarce. Whenever you're under 3 cards in your hand, it's likely you'll stay around that amount for the rest of the game. This is typically a problem reserved for the late game, but what if I told you it could happen as early as turn 3? Let's look at what Belle Hidden Archer actually does. Belle is a 5-ink uninkable card with 3 attack, 3 health, and quest for 3 lore. Its shift allows it to come out for only 3 inked and act immediately. Its ability, Thorny Arrows, makes it so whenever this character is challenged, the challenging character's player discards all cards in their hand. Reading that card's text, you probably had the same first reaction that I did. Wow, this card seems pretty good. I thought the same thing until I started thinking about it a bit more, and then a bit more, and then a bit more, until I realized that this card could be what defines the meta when Rise of the Floodborn releases. In order to clarify what I mean, let me go through 3 key points about this card that, on their own, aren't the biggest deal, but combined into a single card makes a card so much more powerful than any card we've seen so far. Point number 1. This is a 1-card win condition. When I say this is a 1-card win condition, I mean by just having it out on the board, you're saying to your opponent, hey, either deal with this or you lose the game. The reason why you have to deal with Belle is because she either stays on the board and continuously quests for a little under a 1/7 of the total amount you need to win, or you're forced to banish her. Banishing Belle Hidden Archer is going to be a very daunting task, especially if you happen to be a deck without any hard removal. Even with hard removal, Emerald is a deck with a lot of cards you'd want to remove, like John Silver, Cusco, and Mad Hatter. I understand Emerald's whole gimmick is having cards that are hard to remove, but if you decide to attack into Belle, you're pretty much giving up your chances at removing any of your opponent's other characters on the board. Unless you're feeling lucky that you're going to top tech a Be Prepared or a Grab Your Sword, you're not going to come out on top if you're forced to challenge her. Even if you do top deck one of those cards and wipe the board clean, your opponent is still going to have the card advantage because you had to discard your whole hand the turn prior. For another example, your opponent plays Belle Hidden Archer on turn 5, and they already have an established board presence. And let's also say that they have 4 lore. You have a Be Prepared in your hand, but you can't play it until you have 7 ink. Turn 6 comes around and you maybe clear off a weaker enemy, and your opponent's Belle Hidden Archer gets to quest. That's 7 total now. Turn 6 for you, you only have 6 ink after you ink a card, so you don't do anything and pass it to your opponent. They get to quest with their Belle Hidden Archer again, totaling up to 10. Finally, you get to play your Be Prepared and wipe the board clean. Your turn is over now, and your opponent has a 10 lore lead, and a fresh turn in which they can build up their board again. Even waiting a turn or 2 to deal with her can have very rough consequences, and that's only 1 Belle, which brings me to my second point. You can have 4 of Belle Hidden Archer. As someone who plays Sapphire Steel, I run a deck with lots of removal. I run a lot of removal. Even with all of that considered, removing 4 copies of Belle Hidden Archer from play without having to challenge her sounds like such a daunting task. It's not because I don't think it's all of those cards that can handle her, it's because I don't think that I'll have enough to remove Belle and every other card my opponent wants to play. My opponent may be running an Amethyst deck, in which I'll have to worry about things like Elsa, Ursula, or my opponent may play Amber, and I'll have to worry about the Stitch Brothers. My point being is that being forced to let it go or Hades a 3-ink 3/3 isn't in my best interest, but it's also not in my best interest to let her quest for 3 every turn, or challenge her and lose all my card advantage. This entire theoretical was on the basis that you're running exactly Steel Sapphire. There are some decks with no real hard removal at all, and while most decks do run some form of removal, most decks don't run more than 1 or 2 ways to reliably get rid of a single target without challenging. You have to just hope that you get the cards you need to remove her, or your opponent doesn't draw her. At this point, I think I've made a strong point for Belle on her own being too strong, but this is all just evaluating the card itself. There are 56 other cards in the deck, and what if I told you, there's a deck that can make Belle have no weaknesses? To clarify what I mean by this, I have to point out that on her own, Belle does have weaknesses. Her low health means she gets banished rather easily to cards like Smash. It's unlikely that she lives more than one challenge if you do have to go that route, and of course she can always be hard removed. If your opponent draws her early and can't shift her out, she's uninkable, so she's a dead card in your hand until you get enough ink to play her. These weaknesses aren't anything crazy, but they're well defined. However, if you've realized what I've realized at this point, you're beginning to understand what I mean by the statement, "There's a deck that can make Belle have no weaknesses." Aurora Dreaming Guardian is one of my favorite cards in the whole game. Giving your entire board ward and choosing not to challenge or quest with her means you can protect your whole board from forms of hard removal that target. You'll have to remove her first if you want to get to other threats you may have, and the only way you can do so is if you either deal damage to Aurora with cards like Smash or Fire the Cannons, or you hard remove her with something like Dragonfire. However, being forced to use such removal on Aurora means you can't use it on other cards on the field. If you don't have even more card removal in your hand, the other cards on your board are free to do whatever they want unless you want to challenge them, meaning you're giving up your own board control. Yep, that means you better have more, or you're stuck in the position Belle wants to put you in. This is the main problem I wanted to address, but to make sure I'm not leaving any loose ends, let's briefly talk about her other weaknesses. Belle having 3 health can be offset with the newly revealed Cogsworth Grandfather Clock, giving her a little bit more bulk to take a smash and give her even more safety. You could alternatively put a body card on the board if your opponent has no choice but to challenge, allowing you to possibly quest once or twice more. Her being uninkable can easily be offset if you have Fishbone Quill on your field, allowing you to ink her if you really need to. I do think the combination of these 3 cards make for a theoretical tier 0 deck on paper. I think the only thing that counters this strategy is Be Prepared, or having the resources to banish Aurora before she can shift. However, in my opinion, I think even just having Belle on the board by herself is so oppressive for most decks that you don't even need to have the other 2 on the board in order for Belle to be successful. She'll always have her oppressive ability and force you to make tough calls. So, those are my reasons why I think Belle is overpowered. What do you think about Belle? Is she as strong as I'm making her out to be, or am I over-exaggerating it? I'm curious to know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're hearing this, thank you for watching. Leave a like if you liked the discussion, and subscribe if you want more Lorcana videos like this. Take care.